Thanks, Bill. So you want to be in the Gospel of John, John 20, verses 24 to 29 we're going to be focusing on. How many of you, when you were younger, or perhaps even now, had or have a nickname? None of you? Okay, a few of you did. I'm not going to ask you to call out your nicknames, because we all know that sometimes nicknames aren't always the most pleasant of things. I always wanted a very cool nickname, especially when I was at school. I wanted to have a really cool nickname, and I never got one. As an adult, I did get called Snowy for a little while, which I quite like, because my birth surname is White. Rachel brings the Evans into the relationship. And so I was Snowy White. That was while I was playing for a living. It was also the name of a very famous saxophonist from the 70s. So that was quite a cool nickname. I quite enjoyed that. And the coolest nickname I ever had, for reasons I'm not going to go into this morning, was Mr. X. And I loved that for a little while. I lived on that for quite a while. But when I was at school, I was not so fortunate. In fact, when I was at school, I had a number of nicknames that I just can't repeat in public, and certainly wouldn't do so from the front of a church. And one of those nicknames I acquired at an Outward Bound event. Do any of you remember Outward Bound? Any of you been at? Yeah, so Outward Bound events, in year 7 when I was at school, so I was quite young, in year 7, we went to this place, a big manor house on an estate, and the manor house had been converted into this centre where young people would go and stay for a week or a weekend, and you'd get involved, you'd do loads of activities, usually outdoor, physical stuff, but also team building stuff, and all things like that. So we went away for the week. And during that week, I had a really big panic attack at one of the events. It's quite a serious panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I lost focus and vision. I was very faint. And I was absolutely in floods of tears. Now, I was unfortunate enough, or fortunate enough, depending on how you look at it, to grow up during the 80s and 90s, where if you were a boy, you did not cry. And I grew up in a school, or I went to a school, that had been it wasn't anymore, but it had been a former grammar school. And so, unless you were a rough and tough rugby-playing lad, you were a victim of the lads who were there. So you can imagine that after this event, where I literally did break down, and the staff there were brilliant. They looked after me, they made sure I was safe, they made sure I was comfortable. And then, in a beautiful example of how to help someone who is having a panic attack, after I'd gone away and I'd showered and I'd got warm again, they brought me back and they let me time the event. They let me be involved in the sort of the monitoring of the event. So I wasn't just sent to one side to sit on a bench like I had been a lot in PE. I was actually involved. They were great. But because of this, I gained the nickname Crybaby. And I gained the nickname Crybaby for the better part of 2 years afterwards. It only went when I went to a different school. It's a horrible nickname. It's an awful nickname, especially because that was one moment of weakness in what had otherwise been a week of great triumph for me. I gained the nickname Crybaby Simon, which I was called by a lot of people, including 2 teachers. Those of you who are laughing, I hope this is nervous laughter, because it's actually quite a horrible thing when you think about it. I gained this nickname. I didn't gain any nickname from anything else I did. So I had one moment of panic and perceived weakness. That's what gave me the nickname. I was the best at archery that week. By miles. I was nailing, most people weren't even hitting the target, but I was nailing within either the bull or within the one of the 2 outer rings for that. Didn't gain the nickname Hawkeye or Deadshot or Bullseye or something cool like that. I was the fastest up the climbing wall, because although I wasn't particularly strong, I was quite small and quite scrappy. And I was the fastest up the climbing wall. I didn't get the nickname Spider-Man or anything like that. I was the first person to take on the abseiling, and that is genuinely terrifying when you're 12. But I didn't get a cool nickname from that either. No, I got a nickname because of one moment, one incident that was perceived as weak, one incident that these awful other kids decided was going to label me. Some of you can see where I'm going with this. See, we are very good at labeling people by one moment. Crybaby Simon. or the one who messed up, or the one who failed, or as we're thinking about this morning, the one who doubted. This morning we're thinking about the disciple Thomas, and you all know him best as what? Doubting Thomas. In fact, in some translations, not in the NIV, in some translations, that is what this passage is called, Doubting Thomas. Why do we call him Doubting Thomas? Why don't we call him Loyal Thomas? You know, earlier in John's Gospel, Thomas is the one who, when Jesus says he has to go and die, Thomas is the one who said, let us go also that we may die with him. Why don't we call him Loyal Thomas? Why don't we call him Honest Thomas? Because in this moment, Thomas is the honest one. He's saying, look, I'm not going to believe this until I've seen evidence. Why don't we call him Honest Thomas? Why don't we call him Devoted Thomas? Thomas who walked with Jesus throughout his discipleship. Thomas who never questioned, who was only ever loyal, honest, and devoted. Why do we call him Doubting Thomas? Because we're very good at letting one moment, especially a moment of doubt or fear or failure or perceived weakness, become an identity. It took me 2 years to grow out of the nickname Crybaby Simon, and it only happened when I moved to a different school where other people knew me. Where other people didn't know that story and didn't know me. We let one moment, and we might not get a nickname for it, but we so often let one moment of doubt, one moment of failure, one moment of weakness become our identity. Why do we do that? Because I'll tell you who doesn't do that. God. I'll tell you who doesn't do that. Jesus. That is not what God and Jesus do. So we're looking at the story of Doubting Thomas this morning. Grab your Bibles. You want to be in John 20. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the other disciples when Jesus came. So they said to him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. Unless I see, I will not believe. So let's be honest about Thomas. He's not an outsider. He's one of the insiders. He's one of the 12. He's one of the people that Jesus has selected, taken out of normal life, out of day-to-day life, has selected to walk with him. One of the people who was privileged to walk in the dust of the feet of Rabbi Jesus. One of the people who bore witness to the miracles. One of the people who bore witness to the teachings. One of the people who was there when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. One of the people who was there when Jesus healed the blind man. One of the people who was there when Jesus healed the man at Shiloh. This is Thomas. He's part of the crowd. He's inside. And maybe that is why we are so quick to say he's doubting Thomas, because of this one moment. Unless I see, I will not believe. Thomas's doubt doesn't come from a place of not being committed to Jesus. Thomas's doubt doesn't come from a place of inquiry. It doesn't come from a place of being outside. It comes from a deep investment. He's already walking with Christ. He already believes. He knows that Jesus is the Son of God. There's no doubt in my mind, there's no question at all from what we see of Thomas in the Gospels that he knows, he believes. Let us go with him that we may die as well. Compare that, contrast that to Peter. No, Lord, don't say these things. Thomas is a believer. He's sold out. He's in the club. He's part of it. But yet he has this moment of doubt. And one of our big problems comes when we think of doubt as being the opposite of faith. Do you know you can believe, you can have deep faith and still have doubt? Do you really know that? That you can believe in Jesus and still have moments of doubt. You can still have questions. You can still have things you don't understand, things that you are asking about, things that hurt you when you think about them. The truth is that doubt is not the opposite of faith. It actually often grows in the deep soil of faith. Sometimes doubt is evidence of our faith. If you're doubting God, if you're questioning God, why are you letting this happen, God? Why is this going on? At least you're acknowledging there's a God to whom you want to address that question. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. Sometimes it grows deep in the soil of faith, and a lot of the time it is a response to something that is going on that we cannot process, we cannot understand in human terms. This is what Thomas is going through. All the rest of the disciples have seen Jesus. Thomas hasn't. Jesus appeared to the rest of the disciples, and what does he do? What does John say about this? The disciples were together. Jesus comes and he says, "Peace be with you." And then what does he do? After he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Have you ever thought about that? That Jesus knows there's going to be questions, and he goes, "Here, see my hand, see my side." He's proved to them who he is. The other disciples have already seen. Thomas hasn't. So Jesus appears to Thomas, or Thomas is with the disciples rather, and they're saying, "We've seen him, we've seen Jesus." And Thomas naturally has doubt about this. He says, "You can't possibly have seen him because he's dead." And then Jesus appears, and Jesus does what Jesus does when we're doubting, and he says, "Here I am, see my hands and see my side." Thomas is the only one who's named who has the doubts. I wonder what the other 10 remaining disciples at that time were thinking. Do you think they had doubts, or do you think they just accepted? And if they just accepted, why did Jesus come to them and say, "See my hands and see my side"? We miss it in this story so often because we're so quick to jump on Thomas for being doubting Thomas. We're so quick to jump on him. But he gets the same treatment as the other disciples. It's just that Thomas does it a little bit later. See my hand, see my side. Jesus gives him what he needs. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. When you're saying, "I thought God would do this. I don't understand why this is happening." When you're saying, "Where is Jesus in the midst of this?" Those are good questions, and those are questions that are coming from a place of faith. When Thomas says, "I need to see to believe," he's not coming from a place of doubt, it's from disbelief, sorry. He's coming from a place of deep faith. He just wants to believe this so much. Because here's the first thing I want you to remember. Doubt does not define you. Doubt does not define you. It is not a sign that you've lost faith. It doesn't mean you're doing faith wrong. Maybe, just maybe, your doubt is a sign that you're engaging with God honestly. You're not pretending. Do you know, it makes me laugh. I've got to be honest, it makes me laugh. And I do it myself. So please don't think I'm standing here saying I've got this licked. I know what I'm doing. I do this myself. Sometimes I pretend to God. No, I'm all right at the minute, God. Yeah, everything's fine. No, it's all right. No, I'm all right. I'm doing okay. When I'm actually a mess inside. No, God, I'm not struggling with anything this week. When actually I'm really wrestling with something quite profound and deep. Why do we lie to God? Why do we try and deceive the God who knows everything anyway? You know, our lives, our discipleship would be so much easier if we were just honest with God in the first place. Yeah, Lord, I've messed up this week. I've royally messed up. I've completely strayed from the path, and I need your help to get me back on the straight and narrow. Yes, Lord, I'm really struggling with this thing that's going on at the minute, and I don't know how to process it. It's making me wonder. It's making me question what's going on, and I need your help to sort my head out, to sort my thinking out, to get me back where you need me to be. Because doubt doesn't define you. You might be all sorts of things. You are all sorts of things. There's all sorts of words, all sorts of appellations you can give yourself to say, "I am this, I am the other." I've said this before. I can say, "I am a father. I've got 3 children. That makes me a father. I'm a husband. I've got a wife. That makes me a husband. I'm a musician. I play music. I enjoy that. That makes me a musician. I can list all sorts of things about me, and those are fine. But do you know the thing that defines who I am? I'm a child of God. Not because I say I am, but because God says I am. That is what defines me. That is the only definition that actually matters in the end. I am a child of God. The moment I gave my life to Jesus, the moment I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Saviour, the moment I made that and I surrendered my heart and I surrendered my life to Jesus and said, I am walking with you, I was adopted. I was made a child of God and nothing else matters. I hadn't been crybaby Simon for many, many years, but that's gone. It's been destroyed. It's been melted away. It's been disintegrated, just like everything else. Because I am a child of God. That makes me a co-heir in the kingdom with Christ. That makes me a son of the Almighty. That makes me not a sinner, but a saint in the kingdom, because those are the things that God says about me. And if God's the one who created me, then God's the one who gets to define me, not anybody else. I don't need a nickname anymore, because I'm a child of God. I don't need a title anymore because I'm a child of God. I don't need to define myself by what I think I am and what I think I'm not, what I think I've done, what I think I haven't done, what I have and haven't done. I don't need to define myself by how many qualifications I've got. I don't need to define myself by how many followers I've got on social media. I don't need to define myself by what my job is or what my money situation is. I don't need to define myself by how I dress or what I look or what music I listen to, what TV I like. I don't need to define myself by anything except for this one truth. I am a child of God. You are a child of God. Doubt does not define you. Do you know what? Faith doesn't define you either. Because you're a child of God. And sometimes your faith will be strong and sometimes it won't. But does that change what you are? No. What are you? Say it. I am a child of God. Say it and believe it. I am a child of God. That is all that defines you. Why don't we call Thomas, child of God? Because we love to define by one moment of perceived weakness. But doubt doesn't define you, and it doesn't disqualify you either. Having doubts does not disqualify you from being a follower of Jesus, because Jesus meets you where you are. This is a beautiful moment. A week later, the disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." This, by the way, is a repetition of what he's just done to the previous disciples. Peace be with you. He comes in. I mean, you'd need peace being with you if the Lord, who you thought was dead, had suddenly appeared in front of you. I think I would be. That's definitely one of those do not be afraid angel at Christmas moments, isn't it? Jesus just appears. Peace be with you. Then he says to Thomas, we get nothing else. Nothing else happens. Thomas doesn't go to him. The other disciples don't go to Jesus and go, well, look, Jesus, it's great you're back and all that, but Thomas really needs a little bit of something. Jesus knows where Thomas is. He knows what he needs, and he goes up and he says, here, put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Jesus knows our need. Jesus knows our need, even when we might not be able to articulate it. Now, Thomas has. Thomas has already said, I need to see this to believe. That's great. Thomas shows great emotional maturity here. Emotional intelligence is what it's called, where he recognizes what he needs. I need to see. But Jesus meets him exactly where he needs. And he doesn't rebuke him. He doesn't shame him. He doesn't say, oh, Thomas, you big old doubter. He doesn't come in and warmly greet the rest of the disciples and then turn to Thomas and say, we need to have a word. He comes up to Thomas and he says, peace be with you. Here I am. See my hand, see my side. Now believe. He doesn't say to Thomas, you should know better. For 3 years you walked with me. Did it not count for anything? He says, see my hand, see my side. Now believe. He gives Thomas what he asked for. He didn't give it straight away, mind you. You'll notice that a week has gone by since Thomas said, I need to see this proof. And Jesus appears to him and says, well, here it is. Thomas has to sit in some of the tension. He has to sit with the discomfort of it for a bit. Sometimes Jesus is not going to meet you immediately because there's some work that needs to go on before you will be ready to believe. We live in a world where we want instantaneous answers, instantaneous responses. I phoned the doctor to make an appointment. I'm angry because I can't get an appointment that exact same day. Now, we're not going to start down the problems with booking a doctor's appointment at the minute because, firstly, this isn't a stand-up show. Secondly, this isn't my therapy session. And thirdly, you're all with me on this one. And it's nothing to do with the doctors, by the way. I just have utter respect for the NHS. It is really difficult to get an appointment, let's be honest. And that makes me infuriated. I'm like, well, I want an appointment now. I'm not actually really ill. I'm not seriously ill. I just need an appointment or whatever it is. I order something on the internet. It doesn't turn up the very next day. I'm like, why has my thing not come the very next day? Especially when you pay for next day delivery. Well, no. I'm not using you as therapy this morning, but maybe we can have a conversation about this afterwards. What I'm saying is we often want immediacy. We want immediate answers. We want an immediate response. That's not always how God works. Sometimes we have to wait for it. Thomas had to wait a week. But he waited, and then Jesus met him exactly where he was, gave him exactly what he needed. So sometimes our prayers feel unanswered. Sometimes our questions linger. And sometimes seasons last longer than we like. But Jesus always turns up. Because he's not put off by our doubt or our fear. He moves towards it. And look at what he says to Thomas. This isn't a rebuke, it's an invitation. Come here. Look again. Trust me. Jesus shows Thomas his wounds. The hole in his hand, the hole in his side. Because Jesus calls us to him. He doesn't call us out. O ye of little faith. He never says it. Oh, you have backslid. Oh, you prodigal. He never says it. Never. He says, come and see. And what's going to happen in a minute in John's account of the gospel is a little bit later. Jesus is going to reinstate Peter. And you'll notice this is an echo. It's the same thing. Jesus doesn't rebuke Peter harshly. He says, do you love me? Yes. Do you love me? Yes. Do you love me? Yes. Then go and feed my sheep. Jesus meets us where we are. He says, bring your doubts to me. Bring your failure to me. Bring your misapprehensions. Bring your misunderstandings. Bring it all to me because I am not going to judge you for it. I'm going to love you through it. How often do we take and hide our doubts? We lie to God. No, I'm not doubting. Because we think if we say, I'm struggling with this, I'm doubting for this, that somehow God is going to abandon us. Has God ever abandoned you, ever, in your life? No. What makes you think he's going to do it then just because you say, Lord, I'm struggling with this, I'm doubting. I've got issues with this. I'm someone who lives with a state of anxiety. I have clinically diagnosed anxiety. So I know what it is like to feel anxious about everything. We have a rule in amongst the leadership. Well, it's not a rule, it's a guideline. And some other people know this. That if you message me and you say something like, I want to talk to you or we need a chat, you also have to preface it with, you're not in trouble, but. And this happens a lot. I can see there's people laughing at me. You're not in trouble, but I just need to chat to you about this. Because if you email me and you go, we need to talk about this, my first thought is, I'm in trouble. What have I done wrong? That's because I live with this anxiety all the time. If I took all my doubts and pushed them inwards, I would just have even more anxiety. If I take all my doubts and I push them outwards, I'm just going to be distracting myself and never dealing with them. And it's easy, isn't it, to get busy for Jesus rather than to get intimate with him. Faith grows when doubt is brought into the presence of Jesus and not hidden from it. Doubt does not define you. Doubt does not disqualify you. So don't let doubt derail you. What does Thomas say immediately to Jesus? My Lord and my God. The instant that Thomas is met, he responds with faith, my Lord and my God. This is an incredible declaration of faith because the doubter, as we call him, becomes the one who immediately and fully recognizes Jesus' identity. Lord and God. And not just that, but he makes it personal. My Lord and my God. This isn't just a declaration of a statement. You are Lord, you are God, you are my Lord, you are my God. You have met me personally and you are leading me. Because when Jesus meets us in our doubts, it can lead to deeper and more personal faith. And the truth is, to be honest, those doubts might not always be as immediately overcome. We've got to be honest here. This is an amazing moment. But those doubts might not always immediately be overcome. It might take time. It might take work. It might take several encounters with Jesus. But when you have those encounters, that's what's going to happen. So why do we call him Doubting Thomas? Because in this moment, he's transformed Thomas. And that's alliterative, and that's way better. In this moment, he's worshipful Thomas. This is a beautiful, beautiful moment because the man who is remembered and who we know for doubt gives one of the clearest declarations of faith we see in all of Scripture. My Lord and my God. Don't let doubt derail you. And Jesus' response is beautiful. Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Again, it's not a rebuke. It's not, I had to prove myself to you. It's a statement of fact. You've seen me and you believe. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Because here's the thing. Thomas got that meeting with the risen Jesus. He got to see his hands and his side. We don't. And that means that our faith is harder to navigate at times. We were not in the room. We don't get the same physical proof that Thomas got. And yet we're invited to have the same relationship, the same faith. And we're invited into the same encounter, not with the physical Jesus standing in front of us, but through the power of the Holy Spirit who comes to live within us. I can't put my fingers into Jesus' wounds, but I can feel the impact of Jesus' life and his death and his resurrection through the power of the Spirit who is alive within me and within others I encounter. The Spirit is who leads us into that place. Because we live in the ongoing story of this resurrection. Faith is still possible. Faith is still real. Faith is still alive. You're not at a disadvantage just because you can't put your fingers physically on Jesus. You're part of the next chapter of the unfolding of God's kingdom and the unfolding of God's power, presence, and proof. We might not be able to see exactly what Thomas saw, but we can know the same Jesus. And just like last week on the road to Emmaus, Jesus went and met the two men in their confusion. Well, Jesus comes and meets us in our doubt as well. So if you're here this morning and you are struggling with doubt, firstly, I want to just tell you a couple of things that you can do about it. Firstly, just be honest about it. You don't have to tell anybody else, though you know what? Sometimes just telling somebody else can be the biggest hurdle and can be the biggest help. But be honest about it. Tell Jesus. He already knows. He already knows. Don't hide it from him. There's no point. Take it to him. Pray. Seek him. Encounter him. Don't just internalize it or externalize it because you're not going to get anywhere with it. Stay present. Thomas had to wait a week. You might have to wait a week or a month or a year or 10 years. Don't run away from Christ. Don't run away from the other disciples. Thomas was with the other disciples. You know who the best people are to support you if you're doubting, if you're struggling? It's your church family. The people who love you, the people who trust you, the people you're committed to. And finally, expect Jesus to meet you. Maybe not how or when you expect it or you want it, but he will meet you. 2 years I was called Crybaby Simon, and it devastated me. It caused me all sorts of issues, all sorts of problems. For 2,000 years we've called him Doubting Thomas. Maybe it's time to let that drop. Because if we're honest, we're all more like him than we care to admit at times.